yourself. If you don't ever bother me again the rest of my life, I ain't giving them that shit. I can't. There's good friends of mine out there fucking say, well, he's divorced, what have to do with stuff? That's why I said to you before, you don't understand what the money is. The most of me is that the boss is your boss.
And welcome to Mob Talk Radio. I am your host, Jeff Knarcy. It has been legitimately 7 months since I have done a live. 2025 is going to be a big year for us here on YouTube. We're going to start doing a lot of different things. We're also live streaming on Twitch as well. Twitch is a different platform that I think we're going to use. And I'm going to go through the chat for a few minutes, but we've got a pretty big show tonight. We're going to be talking about Carlo Gambino and some other things as well, but that's going to be sort of the big topic of the night. So I'm going to go through the chat really quick. Michael, how are you? Stacy, been a long time. Ian, how are you? Chardonnay, how's it going? Jesse Roth is in the house. Susan is in the house. Terrell is in the house. Jim, love the show, listening from Cork, Ireland. I got family in Cork, believe it or not. So like I said, it's been a long 7 months. We haven't done a lot of lives, but this is going to be sort of the new standard. And I wasn't expecting a lot of people to be here tonight because there's like a million different things going on YouTube, obviously, that people are going to watch. But I promise you, you are going, oh, there she is. There she is. Andrea Middleton. I can promise you that what you're going to see on this show, visually, nobody else is doing. One of the things that I really try to do hard on this show, other than get my information right majority of the time, is I really try to make an effort to give you a visual to go with what we're actually trying to do. Before we start the show, I just wanted to jump in here and show this. This is going to be debuting next Saturday night over here on YouTube. It'll be every Saturday night from 9 to 11. And that's not the right fucking thing. Here it is. Hold on a minute. All right, so that is going to be a show about nothing and about everything. As well on that show, we're going to do a little bit of this. And that is exactly what you think it is. It's going to be a bit of everything. It's going to be a bit of everything. So to get started with the show, I want to welcome everybody in here. I'm surprised we have 52. We're going to talk about some things. And the first topic of the evening, I think, is going to be this. And I have a nice little introduction for this. Throughout history, there has been many organized crime bosses whose names will remain etched in American history. Luciano, Capone, Gotti may be the most infamous, the most well-known, but there are other men who truly were the cornerstones of American Cosa Nostra. This week on Mob Talk Radio, we are talking about one of the most powerful Machiavellian gangsters to ever walk the streets of New York. Machiavelli once said, "One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten the wolves." There is one man who personified that quote so much more than any other mafioso. That man is Carlo Gambino. All right, so we're going to be talking about Carlo Gambino a bit tonight. As well, we will be doing this.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
And if I really get frisky, this. All right. So, with all of that being said, yeah, Mickey Griggs, Filthy Jeopardy is going to be is going to be something quite interesting, to say the least. All right, let me let me see here. Why isn't Okay, there we go. We are going to be talking about Carlo Gambino tonight. Let me switch this around a little bit. There we go. It's a little long-winded, but you're going to learn something tonight that you probably never knew before, something nobody's really ever covered before. And I'm not going to ignore you in the chat, but I'm going to go ahead and get through this, and then we'll come back and open it up to a Q&A. And if I decide to go the route of correcting a content creator, it could get a little ugly. But I'm not really trying to do that anymore. But there's a couple of things that, so in the Hall of Fame of gangsters, when you think about it, the guys who were the schemers and just really cutthroat, there's probably 4 or 5 of Mount Rushmore of mob intelligence. However, you would really be hard pressed to find another guy more treacherous than Carlo Gambino. And while a lot of people have talked about Carlo, the one thing that we have done over on our podcast is discuss Carlo Gambino in a way that I think is a lot deeper than most have really gone. There's a lot of misnomers and a lot of disinformation that comes out, but he's one boss we don't know certain things about, especially really his early days. And one thing about Carlo was every single step of the way, he outsmarted everybody. I mean, absolutely everybody. And that's what we're going to do for the next couple of minutes. When Carlo first comes to New York from Italy, stopping for a month in Norfolk, Virginia, he ends up heading back up to New York with Paul Castellano. The Castellanos at the time were already knee-deep in mob affairs in the city and were considered at the time very powerful, even if they were sort of not their own entity per se. Within a relatively quick period of time, Carlo did not waste any time. And the one thing that separated Carlo Gambino apart from everybody else was his ability to make money hand over fist. His connections early on in those early days, especially bootlegging, helped establish his firm footing into the mob. He formed a still down in South Philadelphia with Angelo Anellaro, who you would know as Angelo Bruno. And when World War II breaks out, Carlo would end up stealing war bonds and ration stamps and made an absolute killing financially. In terms of making money, he was an absolute juggernaut, but he was also a vicious killer. And that is a part of his life that you often don't hear a lot about, but we do know certain things that fall in line with the entire schemer that he actually was. So after Luciano takes over in the fall of 1931, he names Vincent Mangano head of what would become the Gambino crime family. I really don't know why Luciano made some of the decisions he did, like guys he put in certain places. But if you look at the Gambino family history, most bosses who became boss ascended the throne by murder, especially in the Gambinos. Joe Morello, clutch hand, killed. Ignazio Lupo, he was forced out. Toto D'Aquila, killed. Alfred Mineo, killed. Frank Scalish, killed. Vincent Mangano, killed. Albert Anastasia, killed. Paul Castellano, killed. So if you look at it, everybody in the Gambino family until Carlo, and then right after, got killed. There's only been 2 bosses in their history that weren't killed. And if you look at other crime families, it wasn't like that. So this idea that somehow that there were rules against this sort of thing is a bit of a joke. It's a bit of a joke. One may use that argument after 1931 that the rules might have been, different in effect per se, but it didn't stop 3 bosses from getting clipped in the Gambino family shortly after that. And the only reason why I bring that up is because people tend to say that John Gotti broke all the rules. And I think I just proved to all of you that the rules don't exist. The rules of the mafia have always been and always will be. Those who are powerful enough to make them and break them are the only ones who truly have a say between right and wrong. So don't sit there and think for 1 second that the commission cared one way or the other. In fact, the commission only truly reacted 3 times. Only 3 times they reacted in 1935 when Dutch Schultz absolutely went berserk and wanted to kill Thomas Dewey, who was the overactive, overzealous prosecutor who was going after everybody. And Schultz went before the commission and asked them to allow him to kill him. They denied it, and he bitterly went behind their back, grabbed Albert Anastasia, and had him sit on the guy's house. And when the commission finds out after Anastasia dropped a dime on Dutch Schultz to the commission, they ordered Dutch Schultz's death. The second major incident would happen in 1963 when Joe Bonanno ordered the deaths of the commission in a move to take over the entire commission. And he acted complicit with Joe Magliocco, and Joe Colombo ends up getting tasked with taking care of the mayhem and instead runs to the commission and tells them about the plot. The commission acted, and then they shelved Bonanno and Magliocco both. And both were completely lucky to survive. The third incident, which we all know about, involved the murder of Angelo Bruno by Antonio Caponegro. The commission was enraged, and they murdered those who they felt were responsible. And those are the 3 big ones. And some will claim that the commission greenlit the murder of John Gotti, but that's 100% not the case, nor has anybody ever presented any evidence proving that. In fact, more people distort that than anything else in the mob culture. So back to Carlo Gambino. So Carlo was in the Mangano crime family. He ends up becoming a captain within that crime family. And even when he was a captain, he had something that nobody else had. I don't know what the relationship was like really between Mangano and Gambino, but what I do know is that Mangano was a brute and insanely demanding. But overall, the truth is that Vincent Mangano was a well-respected and well-liked. So there were not really any issues with the rank and file. And over the years, Mangano had gotten pretty much a shitty reputation, even though it wasn't justified. And a lot of the books and a lot of the pundits claim that Mangano was some sort of beast who ran around hurting people, was hard to get along with, but he really wasn't like that at all. In fact, he was respected and universally well-liked by the commission members and everybody else. The one who didn't like Mangano was his underboss, Albert Anastasia. And more on that dysfunctional relationship in a few minutes. So Carlo had his own crew. And everyone within that crew was Sicilian. And what made this crew was that they were just insulated from even from their own crime family. And what I mean by that is they handled things or issues within their crew silently. If a guy created an issue, it didn't go up the ladder to anybody else higher. The issue was handled quietly and with extreme violence. They were a crew that they just didn't make a ton of money for Mangano, but they also carried out murders at the behest of Mangano. And they were the one crew that nobody knew a ton about, so they had to tread carefully. Carlo, and this is the part of the story a lot of people don't know. He loaded up his crew with his own blood relatives. He stocked the crew with everybody that was related to him. And in multiple FBI debriefs in those days, it showed how powerful that Carlo Gambino was becoming. More than one informant told the FBI that the Gambino's crew was not the largest, but they were the most proficient and the most violent of the Mangano factions. During his time as a captain, Carlo established one of the biggest narcotics operations within the crime family. So this idea that Carlo was against narcotics is not exactly true. The one thing that separated Carlo from a lot of different guys was that he was an absolute traditionalist until it became time not to be. So as we know, Mangano and Anastasia butted heads more often than they didn't. One of the reasons for that was Anastasia's loyalty to Luciano, Vito Genovese, Frank Costello, and others. Anastasia would often be asked to do favors for both, and he did so without the consent of Mangano. And from Mangano's point of view, Luciano and Costello were breaking the rules, and Mangano felt disrespected by the entire thing. Mangano had absorbed the docks, but one of the interesting things is that Albert Anastasia controlled the docks before everybody. And when Anastasia gets in with Mangano, he leaves Anastasia to run those docks. And, from Mangano's point of view, he has a a couple of interesting things going on. Number one, he knows how tough Albert is, but in the back of his mind, much like Joe Bonanno, and I'll probably repeat this again because it's very important, much like Joe Bonanno, he worried about Albert's ambition. And ambition is one of those things that will get you killed in the life quicker than anything else. So to make the situation more interesting, Paul Castellano, who was in Carlo's crew, was often with Vincent Mangano. They were very tight, very friendly, and were constantly seen together. And what the crux of that relationship was Carlo planting his flag. It's been said in books, but also more importantly in paperwork, that Carlo told Paul to cozy up to Vincent Mangano to keep a close eye on him. We don't know how deep Carlo's crew was, but it contained Paul Castellano, Joe Castellano, Bart Castellano, Frank Castellano, Anthony Anastasia, and Victor Masato. Now, Victor Masato was also a cousin of Carlo Gambino and Paul Castellano, and he was in that faction. He was the one guy who did all the killing within that crew. Masato, who was a butcher by trade, is the one who brought Paul Castellano into the butcher business, but Masato used those skills in a different kind of way. He used those skills to dismember people, okay? Masato wasn't always a New York guy either, because at one time he was running a faction of the Gambinos in Newark, New Jersey. And it wasn't until Carlo becomes a captain that Masato comes back to New York to be with his cousin. But we have to take a step back to Mangano and Anastasia for a minute, just because I want everybody to sort of understand how this all sort of began. We know in 1925, and this is before Mangano officially takes over as a boss. This is before Luciano gets rid of Maranzano and Masseria, but Anastasia was already in control of those docks, and he controlled 6 unions that were related to those docks, all ILA stuff. And I only bring that up because, earlier when I was talking about Vincent Mangano and the docks, I might have confused some people, but it was always Anastasia's docks. He controlled them from day one, but the minute that he joins the fold with Mangano, it sort of becomes Mangano's by proxy. But, the thing about Anastasia, that's likely why he gets the underboss position in that family, because of the docks. Anastasia had a lot of power coming in, and that only sort of explains why Mangano started to get a little bit worried. Controlling unions is just a huge deal, and it's not hard to see that in 1931, when Luciano changes it up, Anastasia was probably at that point ready to be a boss. Why he wasn't chosen, I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you. But to make matters even sort of tougher for Mangano was that Anastasia pretty much just did whatever the fuck he wanted to. In 1931, he ice picks a dock worker to death in front of everybody. Didn't even hesitate. And Anastasia was creating an atmosphere in which Mangano began to worry nonstop. We do know in 1948, Anastasia leaves the docks and hands them over to his brother Anthony. Anastasia just prior had bought a dressmaking factory in Hazleton, Pennsylvania, and was really focusing more on those operations. And when Anastasia does that, it sort of sends more red flags up to Mangano, because now Anastasia was beginning to insulate himself. And while most would think, well, that's a good thing for criminality, it was kind of viewed as a move to position himself and to put himself in a certain kind of light. People have said that Mangano removed Anastasia from the docks as a result of their issues and headaches from the murders that Anastasia was committing. But I don't know which side of the fence is more white when it really comes down to it. But I tend to believe that possibly could have happened based on what was about to happen. And you might ask yourself, well, why would Vincent Mangano put Albert's brother in control? And the reason for that would have been because Anthony was pretty much Albert's shadow, and he knew how to run the docks. The same reason why Anthony Scotto ran the docks for decades later. And Anthony Scotto was actually married to Anthony Anastasia's daughter. So there's your connection there. So to make matters even more bad for Anastasia, and I'm not going to get into the Arnold Schuster stuff, but there was a lot of friction, and I guarantee none of you have ever heard this before. There was friction brewing, not just between Anastasia and Mangano, but Albert also had big problems with Tommy Lucchese. Lucchese, who had taken over the Gagliano crime family, worried that behind the scenes, Costello and Anastasia had too much power. He worried that Costello and Anastasia had desires to control the entire waterfront, not just in New York, but as well as New Jersey, which would combat his operations in the garment district. Because if Costello and Anastasia control the waterfront here and in New Jersey, they could jack up prices on shipping. They could just really screw with Lucchese's operations, and it was looked at like a monopoly. So word began to circulate that Tommy Lucchese was ready and willing and able to kill Frank Costello and Anastasia over the perceived notion that Costello and Anastasia were trying to form a monopoly on the waterfront. So in April of 1951, Albert Anastasia decides enough is enough. He wants to take over the family, and the only way of doing that is to kill Vincent Mangano. Anastasia, by killing Mangano, it did a couple of things. Number one, it gave Anastasia control, but more importantly, it would nullify Tommy Lucchese's desires to kill him, especially if the commission passed over the hit on Mangano as just business as usual. And more or less, at the end of the day, it was survival mode for Anastasia more than anything else. And in the early mornings of 1951, Vincent Mangano disappears. Later that day, Philip Mangano, Vincent's brother, who was also the consigliere of the crime family, had gone over to his brother's house. And he was told that he left early in the morning and nobody had seen him. He makes some calls. Nobody's seen him. Goes to the usual spots. Nobody's seen him. Worried, he gets into the car and he heads down to Brooklyn to see Carlo Gambino. Informants would tell the FBI that Philip came in to see Carlo, asked him where his brother was. He was basically just looking for any sort of information that he had. And Philip knew that Carlo's crew was the most vicious and the most proficient within the crime family at the time. So if word had leaked out, Carlo would have known. Carlo denies knowing anything and promised that if he hears anything, he'll let him know. And as Philip gets up to leave to walk out the door, he looks at Carlo Gambino and he promises Carlo that if his brother does not show up by the end of the day, he was going to whack Albert Anastasia. Minutes after Philip left, Carlo Gambino gets into his car and he drives to Atlantic Heights, New Jersey to see Albert Anastasia at his house. And he tells him what the plan is, what Philip is planning to do. Carlo could have buried Albert Anastasia right then and there. He could have not uttered a word. And he wasn't doing it because of his standards or some tradition. He did it because he knew that the Manganos were respected enough that if Philip took over, he was likely going to kill anybody that he suspected that might have been involved or knew about it. And if Carlo was ever going to go up the ladder, he had to tell Anastasia, which is exactly what he did. Later that day, Philip Mangano's bloated body was found floating in Jamaica Bay by a woman who was fishing in a marshy area. He had been shot 3 times in the face, twice in the head, and once in the neck. And as we know, a commission meeting would be held a short time after that. And one of the questions was actually directed at Tommy Lucchese, as he was suspected of doing it based on information they had, that they knew that there was heat between Costello, Anastasia, and Lucchese. So they questioned him and he denied it. Anastasia gets questioned and he denies it in a very, very, very unusual way. He explains to the commission that he had heard that Vincent and Philip were looking to kill him, and that if he reacted, which he didn't, he would have been in his right to kill them, but he didn't. If he did act, which he didn't, it would have been self-defense and only meant to save his own life. And it also helps that at that meeting, Costello backs him up. And the only reason why Anastasia was allowed to live was because of the massive instability another murder would have caused that crime family. And it's long been insinuated that the shooter of both Manganos was Victor Massaro. There you have that. So as we know, Anastasia becomes boss, and Lucchese knew this was going to happen. It was his fear. And you might ask, why would Lucchese back off? Lucchese was a tough guy. He wasn't going to back off. But why would he back off? Well, you have to move forward a couple of years in order to see the bond between Lucchese and Gambino for a little bit of clarification. And I think and listen, I'm not going to say it's 100% accurate, but I would be willing to bet you that Carlo Gambino and Tommy Lucchese met at some point. And Carlo probably made some concessions about the situation because Carlo would need Tommy to he would need Tommy's support to end up taking over. Carlo was a lot more giving as a boss than other men in terms of business. And so from that aspect, it sort of makes sense that Carlo would calm him down and make concessions and promises to come down the road. Carlo essentially gives Anastasia the throne, and he did that to put himself in a better position. And he wanted to sort of lull Anastasia to sleep. Anastasia was a brute. He was loathed by the commission. And the thing is, he had the right friendships which were rooted in money more than anything, Anastasia-wise. Twice. Carlo would save Anastasia's life twice. He kept Mangano from killing him and kept Lucchese from killing him. Carlo knew that Anastasia was a lightning rod, and he could control Anastasia by proxy in many, many ways. Sort of like, let's put him out in front, let him just get in trouble. And that was all by design. Many look at Carlo Gambino and they think they have this sort of awe, shucks, he looks like a grandpa. But that is a very poor misconception if you think that way, because behind the facade, he was a vicious killer. In 1956, 1 year before Appalachian, he proved just how capable and vicious he could be. Gambino was carrying on a very secret affair with a guy by the name of Jerry Rega's wife. And Jerry was a maid guy in the Gambinos who had been inducted shortly after Anastasia took over. This affair had been going on a year, and Rega and his wife would be on again and off again, but eventually they would reconcile, but Gambino was not going to have any of that. Gambino publicly was in a bad spot because in those days, screwing around with the guy's wife was a death sentence, and it wouldn't matter what argument Rega made either way. The commission would have looked down on Carlo for that sort of issue. However, I don't think they would have bypassed the amount of money that Carlo was bringing in, but Rega would be justified in complaining if he did. And Gambino needed the situation to go away. And rather than just move on and, leave the woman alone, Gambino was not about to give her up. Gambino needed a solution to that. And what Gambino does is order the death of somebody on the streets, just a guy that they thought they had an issue with. And he puts Jerry Rega and Joe Traina in charge of that murder. The hit goes down. However, on the hit, Traina reports back to Carlo that after Rega killed the guy, he turned around and went back and emptied the guy's pockets. And that was a huge no-no in the streets. Not only are you risk getting caught, but you just didn't steal a guy's money. The problem is it never happened. Traina made the whole fucking thing up. See, Carlo needed a reason to kill Rega, and he got it in terms of setting him up. Carlo then has a justification for killing him. And in order for Gambino to push police off of his scent, he has Rega hit outside of his turf and made sure that $8,000 was placed in his pockets. When the police found the body loaded with cash, they immediately suspected that this was a hit made on Rega by another crime family because Rega was operating outside of his turf. And everybody, knows that Rega's turf was in Bath Beach, and he was found way outside of his own turf. And so to the police, it appeared as that he was murdered for encroaching. And it just shows you how vicious Carlo Gambino was. We know that Carlo essentially moves then on to Anastasia, and it was a scheme between Genovese, Lucchese, and Gambino to kill Anastasia. And I'm not going to go all over that again. But the idea here was basic. Genovese wanted Costello dead. He needed a partner. Gambino was the perfect partner because he knew how to turn his head. And for that, Anastasia would be killed. They would support each other at the commission meeting, and they both would get what they wanted at the end of the day. And it's worth noting, and a lot of people don't talk about this, it's worth noting that after Carlo Gambino and Vito Genovese assassinate or participate sort of in the scheming and the murder of Anastasia, Carlo purged the streets, having 21 guys killed to ensure that nobody thought for 1 second about revenge. And to push this even further and to give you the aha moment, let's go back to 1940. At the time, Gambino had a massive narcotics operation. He was literally using English ships controlled by the Chinese to import the drugs. And in the 1940s, it was actually Frank Costello who controlled the shipping routes, and he did so through Joe Kennedy. Yes, that Joe Kennedy. Kennedy is the one who sold Costello ships so that Costello could paint them to look like Coast Guard ships. And to make the operation even better, Kennedy was able to control the Coast Guard enough where ships were pushed out of Coast Guard ships were pushed out of certain areas at certain times when Costello's ships were coming through. And now you know why Carlo asked Tommy Lucchese to step down, to back off. He could not lose Costello as his partner in the drug business. Keep in mind, Gambino left the narcotics business after 5 years and was long gone by the time Genovese decides to move on Costello. But the reason why Gambino didn't want Lucchese moving on him was over the money that narcotics was bringing in. And so once again, it just shows how calculating Carlo Gambino was. He pretty much outsmarted everybody. I mean, in my opinion, the two most intelligent gangsters ever were Tommy Lucchese and Carlo Gambino. Think about it, because down the line, Gambino and Lucchese formed an alliance with Vito Genovese that caused Joe Bonanno to go absolutely fucking crazy. And even though that we know all of this, the FBI had intelligence about most of this stuff. And some of you may rightfully so say, well, if they knew all of this, why didn't they do something? Because pre-1957, the FBI was more of an intel gathering group than a law-pushing prosecutorial type of group. Their whole modus operandi from the 20s through 1957 was just to gain intelligence. And it wasn't until the 1957 Appalachian meeting when the FBI had no other choice but to go after them. And in all of it, we know Gambino, I think, only spent a few nights or a few months in prison. I think he did a stretch one time for like 3 months, and he died in his own bed. And only a handful of guys historically can we say that about. So all that being said, that is Carlo Gambino. So hopefully you guys learned a little bit here about Carlo Gambino. I am going to play something really quick because we are going to open it up for the Q&A, unless I decide to go after somebody, but I'd rather not do that. But here's the thing for the Q&A.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
All right, I'm going to go back up in the chat. Oh God, I got a bunch of things. Okay. Let's see. Thank you for being a new member. Let's see. Graphics gorgeous. Thank you very much. Albert Anastasia was one of the most scary men in the history of Cosa Nostra. Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's see. Upgraded my membership, changed my YouTube from KXTA. Okie dokie. Now I know who you are. Thank you very much for the super sticker. I appreciate it. If you guys would like to donate, please hit the thanks button. That's my thing. Like, I have this huge issue. I don't like coming on here and asking for donations. That's been one of my biggest flaws. But we are going to be doing nothing but high-end documentaries with graphics. So every little dollar helps go a long way. Trying to make this profitable. It was sort of a bad year for business last year. But if you have an extra dollar to spare, please do me the solid and donate if you can. I would appreciate that. Good to see you, Blue Blazes. They didn't care where the money came from. They just didn't need to know about it. 100%, Mickey Griggs. You are right. Anastasia didn't become boss because Luciano knew he needed balance. Absolutely. I would agree with you. Totally. 100%. Whose personality was Luciano more like, Mangano or Anastasia? I think it's a combination of both. Once again, KXTA, Blue Blazes, thank you very much for the super sticker. I appreciate it. Let's see. I'm going to just scan down a little bit. Let's see. There's a debate about Scarfo. Gonna pass all that. Willie Moretti. If anybody would like to come on and talk, I am going to drop the link. We are also over on StreamYard as well. I am willing to answer about any question you guys may or may not have, within reason. I typically do not talk about current situations, but I know one or two of you are probably going to ask current things. So if I think that it's passable, I'll do my best to sort of answer that. But there is a lot going on. I'm waiting for the Joey Merlino questions because I know those are coming. That's everything we ever do. Let's see. What did Carlos' son Tommy do for him in the mafia? What did Carlos' son Tommy do for him? Can you be a little more specific than that? I'm a little confused by your question. What did Carlos' son Tommy do for him in the mafia? Carlo Gambino sent envelopes to Luciano until his death. Yeah, he did. They used Frank Sinatra to smuggle money over there too. I'm trying to decide, guys, whether I really want to talk about this other thing because people are going to get upset if I do it, and I'm not trying to start anything with anybody. But I see, here's my thing, and this is what I want everybody to understand. Opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one, right? So everybody's always going to have a different opinion, and I don't mind that so much. What I do have a problem with, though, is sort of when you distort history or you just say something that's just so unbelievable and almost BS that I have a hard time stomaching it. And I try not to be the mafia police, believe it or not. I really don't, because I don't care. But I think that there is a lot of effort on certain. Yes, he did run the Garment District, absolutely, 100%. Well, let me answer this. So if Castellano was so tight with Anastasia, why did Gambino make the move instead of Paul? Because because it's a hierarchical thing. Gambino was the captain in charge. He had more power than Paul. Paul couldn't pull that kind of stuff off. You know what I mean? I remember hearing something about that. I remember hearing something about that, but I can't remember, what the specifics were. But I can tell you this though, it's not the exact same thing, but it's close. But back in the day, guys like Luke Costello, the actor, was Dean Martin's manager, and the big thing back then was to really screw guys with their contracts. And I know that Costello about got his head cracked open by Dean Martin's people just because he wouldn't stop screwing him over money wise. So, yeah, and I think Penn State guy's correct there. Paul probably didn't have the same mindset as Carlo. Paul was a different kind of guy. And listen, truth be told, I mean, family was family, and Paul was going to do whatever Carlo said. You know what I mean? No, Roger Wilco or Roberto Wilco. No, I did not say who the shooters were because everybody disagrees on who it was. I've always thought that Carmine Persco and the Gallows were in on that. I have no reason not to believe that they weren't, but I wasn't there. But everything sort of tells me that was likely the case. That was probably likely the case, no doubt. Let's see. Do I want to go? Oh, man. I just don't want to start a fight with people, but I don't know. I'm on the fence about whether I want to bring this up because to me it's sort of irrelevant, but this sucks because no matter how nice I am about it, people are just going to make it more into something than it really is. The other Castellanos were pretty quiet, low key guys. Pretty quiet, low key guys for the most part. Didn't really set themselves apart from everybody else. I mean, when you have an entire crew that is legitimately all related, like Andromeda is today. I mean, that's what makes you incredibly, incredibly powerful. Yeah, get things off your chest. You feel better. All right. Well, this is going to start some shit, so I might as well just do it. So, with that, Oh boy. Here we go. Let me preface this first by saying opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got one. Okay. But at the same, at the same time, when I hear shit that is just so stupid and so obnoxious and has no merit, and Chardonnay's going to laugh her ass off when she sees what I'm about to post. Because I'm going to tell you something. Here's the secret. I'm not going to tell you who Chardonnay is. Could be a man, could be a woman. Doesn't matter. But this is somebody who knows what I'm about to say is completely accurate. And I'm going to leave it at that. So here we go. And I'm sure if Angel Gotti's was listening, she's about to turn off. All right. Let's do this. Okay. So as you guys can see, there is a content creator who has made some statements in the last week that oh boy, stupid to me. So first of all, this content creator stated that Joey just retired, walked away from the life. He retired when he got out of prison. That's unequivocally 100% not true. 1000% not true. The secondary thing that this content creator said was that there's not much mob left in Philly, just old timers. Let me tell you something. I don't talk about current shit, but I'm going to tell you one thing right now. If you think that there's nothing left in Philly, you are sadly mistaken. And it just shows how inept you are. And see, here's my thing. If you're going to speak on something, you should know what you're talking about. Thank you, Jason. 100%. Chardonnay, you know. I can tell you with a certifiable fact, because I have been on this show. Everybody knows who I'm friends with, who I'm no longer friends with, who I'm still friends with down there. I can tell you for 100 old timers, what fucking old timers are you talking about? What old timers? Is a 60-year-old an old timer? Or 40-year-old guys? Old timers? The old timers are gone in Philadelphia. The old timers are gone. It's 60 and under. And this is my whole point with this, is people say stupid shit like this all the time. And listen, I don't ever want to validate a moron by saying that this is the position it puts me in. I don't want to validate something, whether it's like, who's the boss? I'm not going to validate that on here. I'm just never going to do that. However, when you say something as inept as this, no, it's not Nadeau. It is absolutely not. Even Jeff Nadeau will tell you Philadelphia is still active. Jeff Nadeau will tell you that. Jeff Nadeau's no dummy when it comes to that stuff. He's not really a dummy anyway, but he knows just as much as I do. Philadelphia is not much left in Philly. Yeah, okay. You have no idea what you're talking about, James Proctor. That's who I'm talking about. And I just wish that before you would say stuff like this, you would know one way or the other what was true, and what isn't. And that's the problem that I have. You have people like Scott Bernstein that say the most ludicrous shit too, without even knowing. And that's sort of my thing. Now, if I came on here and said, check this out, guys, I don't know anybody. I've never been around guys, but here's two sides of the fence. You go ahead and figure it out. And you have to decide. You have to decide when you get into the mob genre. Are you going to be the National Enquirer? Are you going to be like the breaking news, Jerry Capisci type? Or are you going to talk about history? Now, you can be all three of those if you want to be. But, you know, you just need to either know what you're talking about or just don't bring it up. And that's my point of view with it. That's just my point of view with it. He's wrong about that. He's wrong about a lot of stuff that he says. And listen, there's a learning curve, right? Anytime you do this kind of stuff, there is a learning curve to this. But when you say something that's just completely inaccurate, I have to, and then you follow that up with, and I, if I'm misquoting, I'll apologize. But when you follow that up with, well, people often ask me, if I want to interview Joey Merlino, blah, 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 blah. That tells me the reason why you just said those two things is because you want to be friendly with the guy. And that's the difference between me and a lot of other people on here. I don't have to pretend to be friendly. I know people I know, and there's people I don't know. But the thing is that if you're going to be the Jerry Capiscis of the world, make sure what you're saying is accurate, or at least listen, do yourself a favor, and at least give yourself an out. And how you give yourself an out is say, hey, this is what I hear, but it's alleged. Who knows? That's how you give yourself an out. But when you say there's no mob left in Philly, just old guys, you are sadly mistaken. And when you say that Joey, retired and walked away, nope, not true either. Not since 1964 has any active mob boss ever been thrown out of the mafia. And everybody knows why he was. I'm not going to regurgitate that here. But to me, it's just, you can disagree and have different opinions, but when you just publicly state two lies like that aren't even like, I'm not coming on here and telling these guys that, well, let me tell you why not much left in Philly isn't true. And I start naming guys and stuff like that. I'm never going to do anything like that. Okay. Joey's out of the life. He's done. Nobody will have nothing to do with him. He is persona non grata. He might as well be dead. He might as well be dead at this point. Okay. That's just the truth. But if you want the guy to like you so much that you're willing to like invent something to kiss his ass, come on. So it's not like I dislike James. I want people to understand something. It's not that I dislike the guy. I just think he's wrong about this. And that's all there is to it. That's all there is to it. And I think at the end of the day, I think he says it best. I don't know anybody. I don't have inside sources. So here's the thing. If you don't know anybody, you don't have any inside sources, why are you regurgitating lies? And you cannot take what Scott Bernstein says as gospel. You just can't. And that's just the truth. And that's just the truth. And I'm sorry if this upsets him, but I'm not being a dick. I'm really not being a dick. I'm just calling it as I see it. That's it. That's all I have to say about it. This isn't going to be like a pick on anybody, kick them in the teeth. Just if you don't know, don't say it with such positivity, because now you're distorting what the truth is. And I just don't like that. Let's see. Too many content creators copy each other. One guy does a show, then they all feel, well, here's the thing about that. So I'll give you a good example of this. For those of you that know, John Gotti Jr. did a terrific interview with Patrick Bet-David, and John Gotti Jr. had some things to say. And of course, there's going to be reaction because everybody wants to stay on the hot topic, right? So I understand why Jeff Nadeau would make a video with what John said. I even made one, right? And I can understand why all the other guys did. And then, Sammy's going to respond because he doesn't like what John said about him. So Sammy's going to say a bunch of stupid shit. And then people are going to respond to that. I understand why people do that. That's how you get clicks, like, and views. But from my perspective, I wouldn't do that. That's just not me. I try to be a little original with the stuff. And I'm not saying that people that do that are not being original. I just think that there is content, then there's what we call recycled nonsense. Recycled nonsense is talking about the same old thing 15 different ways. I don't blame anybody for responding, but I will give someone $5,000 if you ever see me playing somebody else's video and making comments. I'm just not going to do it. Now, what I will do is I will watch a video and say, okay, let me write a couple of notes and I'll blow holes in it. I'll do that, but I'm not going to. I try to just gain whatever views I possibly can on my own merits and sort of my own ability. Let's see. I think you did this respectfully. People are going to get things wrong. Listen, and it's not, I'm not calling anybody a dummy. I'm not being disrespectful. I just think you heard. Here's what it really is, because this makes me happy now that I just thought of this. It's if you want to be respected, if you want to be validated, then what you have to do is always be honest to a fault. If I don't know something, I'll tell you guys I don't know it. If I got it wrong, I'll tell you I got it wrong. But if you don't know, say, here's two sides of the coin. The streets are saying this from what I understand. The feds are saying this. I don't know, but this is what I tend to believe. Who knows? When you say something like I tend to believe, that's just your opinion. Nobody can fault you for that. And I would never fault him for that. So I just think from my perspective, I've been in this game 10 years. And there's just certain things that, you're going to do. And that's it. I've made mistakes too, throughout my course of my history. But I have every right to clarify what the truth is, because I think people come here because they know that I know what I'm talking about. And I just, I wish everybody luck. That's it. That's all. That is all. Nah, I'm not being a dick. Let's see if so there's supposed to be an audio clip of Al Capone's voice on YouTube. Sounds like a cartoon character. You heard it. No, it's not authentic. I heard that a couple of years ago, and that is like you guys remember the cartoons back in the day on oh God, those old gangster cartoons. Yeah. You see those kind of things, let's see. Not doing what you're doing right now is a bad move. I don't understand that. Not doing what you're doing right now is a bad move. So I'm confused. Can someone is Lee? What does that mean? Not doing what you're doing is a bad move. Or now doing what you're doing is I'm totally confused by that. Not doing what you're doing right now is a bad move. I don't know how to take that. Let's see. Hey, no big deal. No problem. People are allowed to disagree as long as they're respectful. Yeah, of course. Listen, I'm going to tell you something, and I honestly mean this. He's great at doing the shorts. Phenomenal. I could never do shorts like that. Never. Never do the shorts. But when it comes to something like this, I just think I would probably know better than most people. James, the most stand-up guy I know, a good man who never backstabs people. I would agree with you. Let's see. This past Friday show on Andromeda, Canada was fantastic. Well, thank you very much. See, I would love to put all of that stuff out from our podcast because we have a lot of good stuff there. And I think a part of the thing with me is I try to put stuff out a couple of months after the fact. But yeah, we do a lot of different things. It's double negative from Lee means you're doing the right thing. No, I mean, listen, people are going to take whatever I say any kind of way. And you know what? Here's the thing. If I didn't like somebody, I honest to God, I wouldn't mention anything. You know what I mean? But it's just my opinion. That's all it is. But I don't feel like I'm stabbing anybody in the back either. I'm just being honest. That's it. That's all I can be is honest. Because listen, even I think Jeff Nadeau will tell you this. I'm the only guy that's covered Philly to the extent that I've had that I have. Scott Bernstein didn't start doing it till about 6 months ago. Nadeau, I think, started like a year and a half ago. But I've been covering Philly for a decade. So that's just kind of my thing. I think it was messed up on Junior's part to put a bad rap on Vinny Basquiano's name like that. The dude's stand-up guy. Well, but see, here's the problem with what you're saying. You're saying that Junior's putting that on Vinny Basquiano, but 2 informants also said, 3 actually said that Vinny Basquiano was in on that too. There was wiretaps of the two talking about it. So how is Junior putting a bad rap on Vinny Basciano? Like, honestly, that's kind of what I'm looking for. Is how is that messed up? It's just it was in court. It was in a court trial. I think it was Joey D'Angelo, Dominic Sicali, one or two other guys that also clarified that there was a sort of a plan in place. Those aren't John's words. Those are like court transcripts. We've, as a matter of fact, I think we put some of those transcripts on our community page. I could be wrong. But no, that's not John doing it. Those are just court transcripts and court files. That's not John just inventing it. Now, what I will tell you, Anthony, now is if Vinny Basciano came out and says, "Oh, none of this is true," blah 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 blah, the rats are lying, then that's a different story. But all the evidence that I have, all the documents I've seen, all the court transcripts I've gone through from every lawyer I've talked to that was either on the case or knows John or knows other people involved in those cases has all said the same thing. And a handful of lawyers ain't going to lie for one guy like that. It's just not possible. How much time do I think P. Diddy will do? Oh God. Probably 1,000 years before it's over and done with. Well, Dobson on his podcast, he wouldn't do that. Well, but he testified to that. So that's my question to you is he says in his podcast he wouldn't do that, but yet he did in a court of law. We have the transcripts. That's exactly what he said. He also said it in debriefings. So if he's saying now that he didn't say that, then I don't know what to tell you. And if you mean, okay, so maybe you mean on that statement, hold on. Maybe you mean on the podcast that maybe he wouldn't have gone along with it and done the same exact thing. Now, that would be sort of subject to interpretation. And I say that because Vinny Basciano never had an opportunity to do that because Joey D'Angelo ends up going bad and becoming an informant. So his portion of maybe doing that never happens. So I can see that argument. But like I said, everything that I've ever seen has said the complete opposite. And once again, and I'll say it this way too, because I'll be fair. I wasn't there. I don't know what happened. And I don't think any of us were. So it really becomes one of those things where a lot of people are saying a lot of different things. But like I said, I believe what I believe based on what I have seen. But who knows? Quick question. I am unaware, and if you don't want to answer, it's okay. Did Joey get shelved in part because of his podcast? Yeah, absolutely. That had a lot to do with it. Absolutely. Drop me the link. I'll be your spot. I don't want to talk about James. And listen, with all due respect, I said what I had to say. It's people being a good guy and stuff like that. It's just a difference of opinion, and it just comes down to it. That's my opinion, and I don't want to argue it. I just don't want to debate it, and it has nothing. It's just I would rather spend time doing other things. Now, if you want me to call you after the show and have a conversation with you, I'll be more than glad to do that. But also going back to the Basciano thing really quick, you got to remember too, that it's not just the court documents. There were a lot of people that went to this trial and listened to these people testify. And so if one guy tells you, well, I would never do, come on. And informants don't always tell the truth. I know that I'm very hard on informants, but try telling the Gotti family who was in trial every day that they didn't hear that wasn't presented as evidence. And so that's kind of my thing. And you're entitled to believe what you want. But it is what it is. I would love to see the four of you guys sit down and do a mob talk. Well, Jamie Frank, there's something kind of in the background that we'll see if it happens. But I'll leave that there. Would you ever do a deep dive on a court case that's not in your wheelhouse? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I got people that send me stuff all the time. Say, hey, will you look at this? But the thing is, I'm not a detective, not a forensic guy. So it's like when you start to get into DNA and all of this, it just gets a little convoluted to me. But yeah, I look at a lot of court cases all the time. Like I had a friend of mine, uh, I don't know if I want to say where he was in the Detroit area and he was having something and sent me some evidence from like a case where somebody's going to testify that he clipped a guy and all this kind of stuff. And he sent me the tapes and I just listened to them and made notes and kind of fed back to what my sort of my opinion was on it. And then he knew somebody had sent me a case on something else. But yeah, I look at other cases all the time. Like I this Diddy stuff, like I can't imagine going through those files. Oh, there's Angel. I was there. So there you go. There you go. I think that she would know better than anybody else. She sat through all those trials, and here's the thing about it for anybody that's going to say this, because I know there's going to be some that will say this. They will say that, well, of course she's going to say that. That's her brother. Well, okay, fine. We all love our family, right? But court transcripts. I've posted. Angel will tell you. I posted the transcripts. I posted parts of articles from the New York Daily News and from Jerry Capisci and everybody else who all had the same thing. And so that's just my thing. That's my thing. If Dominic Sicali now wants to turn around and say something opposite, that's his prerogative. Problem is, you can't untestify. You can't untalk to the government. It just doesn't. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. You should touch on the commission meeting at Richie Boots' house after the Anastasia hit. That was interesting. Yeah, there's some more stuff that I'm going to cover down the line. Definitely 100%. I think Diddy will get suicided. No, they're going to be. You know what? They're eventually going to move him out of Brooklyn. What is it? MDC. They're going to move him out of Brooklyn MDC at some point. They're almost going to have to, because if they don't, then you're going to have like an Epstein kind of thing. But then again, even if they move him to Manhattan, same kind of situation there. And I always thought that whole Epstein thing, like if Manhattan, it's impossible to not be checked on once a month. It's just impossible. Or not once a month, every 15 minutes. There's too many cameras. So for the cameras to go down and all this kind of stuff to happen, it's a little ridiculous. It's a little ridiculous. Let's see. Guys, we're going to go for about 15 more minutes. So we'll end about almost 20 after 9, because I think there are shows coming on after mine. That's the other reason why I don't want to get into a long-winded debate right now, because there's other people that to move their schedule to allow me to come on tonight. But we are going to definitely try to do this at least twice a week. I say that now, but and I'm really surprised. We've had a lot of people in here for the last hour or so. We're 157, something like that. I haven't looked at my my things, but let's see. Let me go back up in the chat. Go back to that. So, Jamie, I meant to sort of expound on this. So, there's a little talk about, I think, me and Kyle Mavecchia and maybe two other guys getting together and doing kind of a big roundtable thing. It's something I've wanted to do for a long time, even though I don't particularly get along with it to do. I still do, though. Would like to do that, because I think that, it would be entertaining. People would think that I was going to kill Nadeau or he would slap me or something crazy like that. But I think we all come from such different we come from different backgrounds. We come from different sort of philosophies. So I think it would be interesting. Sometimes people need to be humbled. All you're doing is just trying to keep the information correct for the viewers. Why the sudden flip-flop on Nadeau? Did you give him? It's not a flip-flop. It's just choosing to just get along to get along. Listen, it does him no good to be mad at me. It does me no good to scream about him. It just doesn't do any good. It doesn't do any good. And I know from a third party that he's really trying in 2025 to just do his thing and just not get into it with people, and I can respect that. So it's not that I've totally flip-flopped. I'm just giving up on the idea of, you know, a part of what I think frustrated me about Jeff is there were some things that we could argue were legitimately factual or not. Um, but one thing I'll never get angry at anybody about is their opinion. You're entitled to have your opinion, but it goes to kind of like, I hate to bring this up again, but it goes to what I just said earlier. If your opinion is rooted in some sort of fact, please show me the fact. Like if you're gonna change what we all typically know is real, then show me something to sort of back that up. And if you don't know anybody, don't talk to anybody, then how can you justifiably say that? And it is what it is. It is what it is. At the end of the day, what I do is what I do. What other people do is what they do. But because for such a long time, I was considered the go-to guy for the Philadelphia stuff, I feel like I have to let people know what's accurate. What's accurate and what isn't. And listen, I could go along and tell everybody, hey, this is accurate. You know what they do? They ignore me or they ignore my emails. So, that's it. It's not a shot at anybody. It's just true. Did you guys know Michael Franzese claimed, this is the big one today, Michael Franzese claimed that he was offered a role on The Sopranos. Did you guys know that? That is the biggest crock of shit I have ever heard in my life. And you know how I know that it's not true? Because of how he worded it. Well, before The Sopranos became a thing, I knew a bunch of people at HBO, and they reached out to my agent friend and offered me a role and wanted me to be sort of the guy that comes on set and tells them what they're doing right and doing wrong. Well, here's the problem with what he said. First of all, The Sopranos did not start with HBO. And what I mean by that is when the screenplays, the pilot draft and everything were out, they actually went to FX and some other companies, NBC, they went to like everybody. And HBO was not their first, sort of their first go-to. They were way on down the line. But the way Michael sort of described this was, he had just started thinking of the idea for The Sopranos, and they told me it was going to be on HBO. No. Because it went to like 10 different networks before it ever reached HBO. So his story's a little iffy there. But Michael in a lot of ways has to be a lot like Sammy to the extent of he has to know everything, has to be involved in everything. Listen, do you think Michael Franzese knew that Whitey Bulger was living 50 miles up the road from him when Bulger was hiding out? No, I don't think so. Did he say that? Because if he did, listen, if he did, but I would not believe that. Michael says a lot of crazy stuff. How are the book sales going? The book sales are going fantastic. I have some news about that, but I can't really share it. But since we have people in here, I will quickly do one thing. Share screen. Window. All right, if you guys are curious, I have written a book called The Mike and the Mob. It was a bestseller for 3 days. Hey, listen, people that self-publish do not become bestsellers. It just doesn't happen. You have to sell a minimum, I think, of 20,000 books. I was a bestseller for 3 days. We're still averaging close to 40 books a day, which is fucking insane to me. If you guys are interested, the book, I think, is $24 with tax, $29. You can go to barnesandnoble.com, type in The Mike and the Mob, or type in Jeff Canarsie down here, and the book will pop up. I am so tired of signing books. You guys, I'm so tired of signing books. And I still have, I think one more I got to do. But we have some big news about this book, but I can't get into it right now. But really, if you guys want a good read, a lot of the response has been fantastic. A lot of people are like, man, I couldn't put this book down. But of course, the trolls ran over there and left all these horrible reviews. And just before the book even went for sale, they did that. So if you guys are interested, the only way you can get this currently is by going to barnesandnoble.com and typing in Jeff Canarsie or The Mike and the Mob. So run out and get yourself a copy. And, you know, maybe what we'll do is we'll do a show one night where people who actually read this can come on and tell me what they thought. All right, guys, I'm going to go through like a couple more of these. We've got like 5 minutes left. Francis has a great product. He was involved with films in Hollywood. He's becoming a podcast giant who's making a fortune with the wine top. No, listen, nobody can say about the guy is that he isn't a prolific earner. The guy knows how to earn money. There's no way around it. He's a good business guy. But you know, if you can separate the lies he tells from the business, then, you know, it's something different. Sammy still thinks he's a fucking boss and everybody needs to clear it with him when they do a show. Oh, come on. This guy's like on his last legs. You know what I mean? Jesse Roth has her copy. I bet Jesse Roth hasn't read it though. People buy it and stick it on this shelf. Weird enough as it is, you know, I don't even have my own copy because I pretty much had like 50 and they all went out. I got to order a new one. But when I had one here a couple of weeks ago, I just thumbed through it and read through it myself. And I was like, wow, this isn't too bad. What are my thoughts on the Penguin? Are you okay with the use of the Gigante last name? You know, here's the thing with the Penguin. I watched the first 3 episodes and then I just caught up with work. You know, just got caught up with work and I just did not have time to like finish the series. So that's it. That's it. I was going to say something, but for once I thought before I said something, which doesn't happen often. Doesn't happen often. If an orphan makes homemade cookies, are they really homemade? Absolutely. Why not? Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody who has donated. Anyway. Well, I have had a good time, everybody. We are going to try to do this twice a week. I don't know when the next one will be because I have the podcast probably next Sunday. Well, you know, maybe not next Sunday because next Saturday night, I want all of you to come over and hang out with us for this. So before, oh yeah, 100%. 100%. She's a fantastic actress. Fantastic. Once again, I appreciate everybody. Please do me a favor, hit the like button, hit the subscription button if you have subscribed. If you could donate, please do. It helps me just do a lot of the editing crap that I have to do. Always got to upgrade shit. I don't know why you just can't buy something and never have to upgrade. It should always just be confluent. And you're going to see something different when this show ends, because now with StreamYard, they have this outro feature. So I put something together for the outro because I live in New York, for those that do know. And there's only really one way to sort of leave anything you do, be it a bar, be it a game show, be it whatever. There's only one way to leave, and that's how we're going to do it. But look for us in the next couple of days. I'll put something out on YouTube about our next live. If you guys are interested, we have merch, which you can hit on the community tab, or the store tab on YouTube. There's our PayPal and everything else down there. Also, if you want to join an award-winning podcast, go to mobtalkradioshow.supercast.com, $10 a month. You get a ton of material. With all that being said, we will see all of you probably next week.
Start spreading the news. I'm leaving today. I want to be a part of it. New York, New York. These vagabond shoes are longing to stray right through the very heart of it. New York, New York. I want to wake up in a city that doesn't sleep and find I'm king of the hill, top of the heap. These little town blues are melting away. I'll make a brand new start of it in old New York. If I can make it there, I'll make it anywhere. It's up to you, New York, New York. New York, New York. I want to wake up in a city that never sleeps and find I'm a number one, top of the list, king of the hill, a number one. These little town blues are melting away. I'm gonna make a brand new start of it in old New York. And if I can make it there, I'm gonna make it anywhere. It's up to you, New